people that I teach environmental science, comments often include things like, what a downer that must be because the world is in shambles. Or, let me guess, we all need to bike to work and be vegans, right? When I tell them I teach high school, comments often include, I could never do that. Teenagers are so awful. Or, teenagers in this generation are so selfish and entitled. How do you even deal with them? These perspectives are influenced by the experiences people have and by the facts that they consume. Perspective, or how we see the world, right, is something that influences the choices that we make. Let's take a classic example of a glass of water. The optimist sees the glass as half full. The pessimist sees the glass as half empty. The realist, or the scientist, will tell you there are 250 milliliters of water in that glass. Meanwhile, the opportunist is drinking the water while we're discussing how full the cup is. And don't forget the denialist, who insists there is no cup of water, right? These perspectives are very important for us to understand the world. It's really important for us to know that none of these perspectives actually changes the facts, right? The amount of water stays the same. What changes is how we look at it, and I would argue what we decide to do about it. So if the facts don't change, can our perspective change? Of course, but how? Well, first, we need to expose ourselves to a wider variety of facts and experiences. Many of us probably don't even realize how much our perspective is influenced by the media. If we don't purposely seek out a variety of sources, our perspective can get skewed, often to the pessimistic, right? Take teenagers, for example, right? We all know about teenagers. If I were to ask a room of adults, let's say over 30, to tell me the first adjective that comes to your mind when you hear the word teenager, chances are the answers are going to be overwhelmingly negative. Our generalizations are due to what we see in the news and maybe our own cursory observations of teens glued to their phones. If we only look at the major headlines, we're going to start to believe that teens are constantly vaping, right? They're constantly engaging in risky behaviors, they're constantly sexting, and they're pretty much unable to do even basic tasks. If we look at headlines about individual teens, they're dominated by drug users, by thieves, and by violent young people. It might seem to you like this generation is completely out of control. If we look at TV and film portrayals of teens, we see a variety of representations of selfish teens, dishonest, irresponsible, shallow, and fame-hungry teens. It's no wonder adults have a very negative view of teenagers. So what about the state of the world, specifically climate change? If you're like me, when you see headlines of climate change, you see ones like this that are accompanied by provocative, if not apocalyptic, images. But these headlines are only part of the story, but they're largely what we see. So we have to remember the goal of the media is to get viewers and to get readers, right? And nothing gets more attention than a catastrophe. And when the Amazon is literally on fire, and many of us in this vicinity are coping with more frequent and stronger hurricanes, it's easy to start to think that we're doomed. And because I'm a teacher, I love to do a little summer reading, and so I found a wonderful book to uplift me this summer called We Are Doomed, Now What? And it's by an English professor named Roy Scranton. It's very eloquent and it's a great read. He cites alarming statistics about global warming and climate change, and he talks about human nature and our constant desire for conflict. He basically says that we have no choice but to simply accept that the apocalyptic consequences of climate change are inevitable. Uplifting, right? One of the loudest voices of climate change, Bill Nye the Science Guy, right, recently this year urged people in the strongest language ever to take notice that the world is on fire, right? It's no wonder that adults have such a pessimistic view of the world. If it's already on fire, why recycle, right? But what you might not realize is that the state of the world is changing, and you might be surprised by how wonderful it is that it's changing. In Ethiopia, citizens planted 350 million trees within a span of 12 hours. The government even closed many offices so that civil servants could participate, and this was all to combat deforestation. In India, one man started this and led by example, inspiring thousands of people to participate in what would become the largest beach cleanup ever, and in the span of 2 years transformed a trash-ridden beach into a pristine coastal ecosystem. Amazing, right? In 2018, our capacity for renewable and solar energy outpaced all of the developments for coal, natural gas, and nuclear power combined. So we're really on the right track. Even Chernobyl is actually having a positive future. It's home to an amazing diversity of wildlife, its forests are expanding, and the future's looking a lot brighter than we initially thought. Some of the coolest developments, though, are coming from a very surprising group of people. Teenagers, right? Greta Thunberg, she gained national attention by organizing a school strike in her home country of Sweden. She inspired thousands of teen activists all over the world to engage in their own strikes and to speak passionately about climate change. They're urging global leaders to take bold action to combat climate change, and she even took a zero-emissions yacht from the UK to the UN Climate Summit. What an amazing example. We're leading the way, teenagers are leading the way in terms of innovation as well. In 2019, Irish teen Fionn Ferreira won the Google Science Fair for creating a way to extract microplastics from water. Pretty amazing. But you don't have to look too far to find teenagers changing the world. Right down the street in Parkland, we have a group of survivors who are spending their every last waking moment trying to make the world a safer place. And they're challenging our stereotypes of selfish, lazy teenagers. Guess what? Right here, we have teenagers who are already changing the world. Glenn Grimmick got international attention for developing a way to extract carbon dioxide from simulated industrial flue gas. This has amazing applications for our emissions in the future. But we have lots of teens who are changing the world. We have teenagers who are engaging in research to figure out ways to purify water naturally and quickly, who are developing devices to stop the spread of mosquito-borne illnesses. And teens, we even have a middle schooler who is engaged in research to lower carbon emissions through intelligent traffic control. These teenagers are channeling their curiosity and their concern for the environment to create real solutions because they care. And every single day, I get to spend time with teenagers who are not only fun to be around, but they show more empathy, more awareness for world issues and suffering, and more desire to make a positive impact on the world than any generation I've ever known about. So when it comes to the state of the world, if you find that your glass is half empty, take a look at the facts. But take a look at all the facts. Our world is in need, but teenagers are leading the charge to make it a better place. And if in 2019, a high school environmental science teacher can see that the glass is getting fuller by the minute, then maybe some new perspectives are on the horizon. Thank you.